Mysterious rift beasts are devouring Earth, but a cryptic system has appeared to grant humanity the power to strike back. Amidst the carnage, the warrior Sun Hyun lay dying with a shattered body, consumed by the crushing weight of his ultimate failure. Just as darkness closed in, the system granted a miracle, a 17-year regression. He awoke, submerged in a strange, warm void. Enveloped in fluid, Sun Hyun realized he was back in the womb, beginning his life anew while retaining every memory of his past. After his mother's agonizing labor, he was finally born. Instantly, the system triggered his first legendary reward. He obtained the comeback skill, a divine ability that triggers massive self-evolution when his combat capacity is completely exhausted. This was the signature power of a legendary villain. After a year of acting like a normal baby, he opened another reward. Luck was on his side as he unlocked the Might of Odin, a skill once used by a tyrant to erase entire guilds. Finally, he had the leverage to hunt his enemies. He wept with joy, though his parents thought he was just hungry. Sun Hyun began completing main quests to hoard overpowered rewards, vowing to outpace the villain who once destroyed his world. He swore to grow faster than that monster to execute him early. Time flew like an arrow in the countryside. It was now 1997. Sun Hyun was currently engaged in a brutal street fight with a massive, armed thug. With a few basic strikes and a crushing knockout, he leveled the giant. His current power stat had reached 87. This far surpassed elite professional athletes. Now, it was time to conquer the sealed F-rank dungeon in 𝒃𝒐𝒏 province. He targeted this location to break his limits. To conquer dungeons quickly, he needed capital for high-grade gear. He remembered his past life savior, Jonathan. In the previous timeline, he was a brilliant healer with powerful recovery abilities. Before he became an awakened, Jonathan was a legendary Wall Street tycoon known as the Grey Wolf of Finance. This man was the solution to his money problems. Sun Hyun used his memories to contact the tycoon immediately. Using an anonymous alias, he baited Jonathan with intel on a hedge fund attack against the Thai economy. This caught Jonathan's attention. His firm was already in chaos, trying to predict the next big market move. Wall Street was confident the Thai baht would collapse easily, just as they had broken the British pound. But Thailand resisted with savage intensity, dealing a massive blow to the hedge funds, exactly as Sun Hyun predicted. The intel left Jonathan reeling. He wondered if he should bet on the baht's growth despite the immense risk. He was torn between trusting this anonymous tipster and the established power of the massive hedge funds. To make matters worse, the tipster demanded half of all profits. It felt like being led into a trap. However, after seeing Thailand's secret maneuvers to maintain growth, Jonathan decided to trust the mysterious voice. "Are you insane? The baht is going to crash," his boss roared, throwing a stack of reports in his face. Jonathan silently endured the humiliation and threats of firing, while Sun Hyun proposed they invest independently. The tension was suffocating. As the currency war peaked, Jonathan faced immense pressure from his billionaire investors. They threatened to pull all support if he kept backing Thailand. Then, Wall Street was rocked by a seismic shift. News broke that Southeast Asian banks had injected $12 trillion to support the baht. The office fell into a panicked frenzy. Traders screamed in despair as $300 million vanished instantly. Jonathan sat frozen in the chaos until a colleague shouted, "Jonathan, you were right! The baht is surging!" It was true. He broke down in tears, the relief of surviving a life-or-death battle washing over him. The next day, his boss tried to parade him as a genius to satisfy the angry corporate giants. Jonathan saw through the scheme. He knew the boss wanted to use him as a human shield. He calmly walked up and slammed his resignation on the table, announcing he would start his own company. His boss could only scream insults about luck, but Jonathan knew he had finally found a true god of destiny. Meanwhile, Sun Hyun was training at home when he received the message. Jonathan was on his way to Seoul. Though technically a middle schooler, his massive physique made his peers avoid him, which suited him just fine. He had no interest in childhood games. As the school bell rang, the predator focused on his true goals. He knew the real battle was just beginning, and this time, he would be the one holding the sword. Every move he made was a step toward the vengeance he had waited 17 years to exact. The world would soon learn the name of the warrior who returned from the brink of death. The school bell echoed, signaling the end of his ordinary life and the start of his legendary hunt. Soo-hyun rushed back to class, leaving the hallway hauntingly silent. Dark memories of his past life resurfaced. Visions of blood and slaughter flashed. No one survived that massacre. His mind drifted into the abyss. Lost in thought, Soo-hyun didn't see his teacher watching. Tears blurred his eyes, baffling even her. After a long flight, Jonathan finally arrived. A mysterious young man was there to greet him. Soo-hyun noted Jonathan's sharp appearance. He looked nothing like the broken man from his past. Nervous about meeting the anonymous sender, Jonathan began bad-mouthing the stranger to the young boy. Suddenly, Soo-hyun spoke up. "I am the one who sent those telegrams, Jonathan. It is time we met." Jonathan froze, eyes wide with disbelief. He stood up, roaring in absolute fury at the teenager. "Are you 19 or 20? Do you realize the chaos you've caused?" Soo-hyun saw the bloodshot rage. This was the real Jonathan. Soo-hyun pulled out a secret file to calm the man's nerves. "Leave if you wish, but read this first." Jonathan snatched the folder, still fuming at the brat. As he flipped the pages, his anger vanished, replaced by pure shock and utter confusion. Soo-hyun gestured for him to sit. The report detailed the rise of the 4 Asian tigers. Major investment funds were already moving. Jonathan was mesmerized by the lethal precision of the data. After the exchange, Jonathan realized his mistake. Underestimating this boy's age was a fatal error. "I need more time to think. But you are truly a terrifying genius." Soo-hyun knew Jonathan's weakness was indecision. He gave him a deadline. June 13th. Jonathan called out, "Why specifically June 13th? He stared at the growth charts in his hand. The graph hit its absolute peak that day. Jonathan trembled. No human could predict the exact date, unless he was a god. Jonathan realized he was standing before a living deity of finance. Soo-hyun smirked and turned to leave. "If you don't decide by then, our deal is dead. If you are the Jonathan I once knew, you will make the right choice this time." A few days later, a message arrived. Jonathan asked, "What shall we name our new empire?" They met at their usual spot. Jonathan was full of regret for doubting Soo-hyun's earlier warnings. The market crash happened exactly as predicted. Jonathan asked how he knew. Soo-hyun gave a simple answer. He claimed it was just pure luck. Sometimes, destiny strikes when you least expect it to happen. Soo-hyun recalled Jonathan's words from the past. Desperation is the enemy of true opportunity. In his past life, Jonathan lost everything trying to buy a legendary challenger box. He was left with nothing but a trash-tier chest. The despair was overwhelming and soul-crushing. But inside that trash was a god-tier skill. Fortune only smiles when you stop begging for it. Ignoring all advice, Jonathan began his bloody quest for revenge. "Hey, why are you staring?" Jonathan's voice snapped him back to reality. "Are you that moved by our new partnership? Now, sign the contract. Do you have your identity card?" Soo-hyun stared at the document intently. He filled in the 13 digits of his security code. It was his only proof of existence. Jonathan looked at the code and turned pale. The birth year revealed a shocking truth. Soo-hyun was only 13 years old. "Focus, Jonathan. It is time to start our real business." Soo-hyun analyzed the Thai currency war. It was getting worse. Massive bailouts would eventually fail. Soon, the global money flow would turn toward Korea, causing a catastrophic market collapse. But the real threat was not just capital. It was a darkness that would engulf the world. Jonathan sensed the scale of the disaster. Even geniuses are helpless against the wrath of nature. Our priority is gold. Tons of it. The hedge funds are about to start a war. When the dust settles, we will be the winners. Jonathan, we are using 50 times leverage. Jonathan's face went white. That was a suicide mission. A 1% drop meant half their wealth. If the market dipped 2%, they would lose everything and go completely bankrupt. Back home, Soo-hyun received a telegram from America. Jonathan asked, "Are you truly certain?" Soo-hyun played a high-stakes game. "Trust my data," he commanded, promising a victory that was already set in stone. While Jonathan trembled, Soo-hyun focused on training, praying for the fortune needed to fund their legendary conquest. The pressure was suffocating Jonathan. His mind raced as he prepared to risk $400,000 on one trade. Should he bet it all for a $20 million fortune? Fine. You crazy kid. Watch a professional at work. 1 week later, Jonathan landed in Seoul. He returned like a conquering god, carrying a massive, mysterious prize in hand. Soo-hyun's eyes widened. He hadn't miscalculated. Jonathan had truly brought back a haul beyond his wildest imaginations. "This treasure is worth more than 700 S-rank crystals." Jonathan trembled, barely able to contain his explosive excitement. "We turned 400,000 into 280 million in 1 week, he screamed, tears of joy streaming down. The next phase of the war begins now. Their eyes burned with ambition as they targeted their next massive objective. Back at the hotel, the financial report showed a staggering 70,000% profit. Jonathan was doing incredibly well. While Jonathan celebrated their victory with beer, Soo-hyun remained cold and focused on the massive hedge fund created. Soo-hyun dropped a bombshell. Thailand would soon shift to a floating exchange rate. That was their golden opportunity. We'll use our entire fund to leverage this bet to the absolute maximum. Jonathan felt like he'd been struck by lightning. Betting $200 million on a single date? If you're not a god, we'll lose everything, Jonathan pleaded. But looking at Soo-hyun, Jonathan saw a being radiating the divine authority of a true, living god. Just play your part, Jonathan. The next day, Jonathan boarded his flight, looking like an awakener entering a dungeon. Meanwhile, Soo-hyun sought a different kind of power. In an underground arena, a massive fighter screamed in agony. Soo-hyun had ruthlessly shattered his arm. The defeated thug retreated, shouting empty threats of revenge as he fled. That night, a gang of thugs blocked Soo-hyun's path. Perfect, he thought, a chance to boost my combat stats. The thugs charged with clubs, but the 13-year-old monster sent them flying with bone-crushing, lightning-fast kicks. Even against overwhelming numbers, they couldn't touch him. However, fatigue began to weigh heavily on his young body. Suddenly, the system flared. A new skill revealed every weakness. But Soo-hyun felt Odin's power was too precious here. The gang leader charged on a heavy motorcycle, slamming into the boy. Soo-hyun was sent flying across the pavement. The pack swarmed, raining down kicks like hammers. His bones snapped, and he could only shield his head in silence. As he lay motionless, the thugs finally stopped. But the big man he'd humiliated earlier wanted one final, brutal blow. Dazed and broken, Soo-hyun tried to rise, only to take a devastating kick directly to the face. His body reached its absolute limit. Suddenly, the system triggered a clutch skill, skyrocketing all his abilities to rank A. Pain vanished. Soo-hyun hovered in midair as a terrifying, violent aura exploded from his body like a supernova. His wounds vanished instantly. The thug's arrogance turned to pure horror as he stared at the monster before him. With a single, casual strike to the jaw, Soo-hyun silenced the leader, knocking him into a deep unconsciousness. The surge of power made his blood boil. Sensing the shift, the terrified boss ordered his remaining men to attack. The world slowed to a crawl. Soo-hyun's fist blurred, obliterating one thug while the others stood paralyzed in terror. The survivor submissively surrendered his weapon. Enraged, the boss revved his bike for one final, desperate suicide charge. Soo-hyun unleashed Odin's wrath. Lightning struck, the bike exploded, and the boy walked away like a silent, invincible legend. Aggression turned to paralyzing shock. Soo-hyun was now levitating, radiating an aura of absolute dominance. A violent energy erupted, instantly mending his wounds. The thug brandished a knife, trembling in terror. He swung wildly as Soo-hyun closed in, but one strike to the jaw silenced that mouth forever. Activating the skill for the first time, his stats exploded. His body burned while adapting to the power. Sensing a monster, the boss retreated and sent his lackeys. They charged with clubs, hoping for luck. Soo-hyun's eyes flashed divine light. To him, they moved in slow motion. He punched one into oblivion. Seeing his partner obliterated, the other thug froze. He submissively surrendered his weapon to choose life. Disgusted by his useless men, the boss revved his engine. Soo-hyun prepared a legendary reception for him. Unleashing Odin's wrath, lightning gathered in his fist. He struck the bike with heaven-shaking force. The motorcycle exploded into a fireball. The boss flew like a broken doll. The snake was headless. The survivors stood paralyzed, afraid to even blink. They only breathed once the monster finally vanished. Back home, I analyzed this skill. It only triggers through external impact. Self-harm is useless. I must forge this into a lethal punch. My ultimate weapon against monsters and villains. Suddenly, the phone rings. It's Jonathan. He's finally made contact. He reports the situation immediately. Everything is moving exactly as I predicted. Profits have surged past 20%. I hear the hesitation in his voice. Jonathan knows I'm playing a bigger game. He asks for the next move. July 2nd. That's when we place our highest stakes. The ultimate gamble begins. When hedge funds move, the world follows. It's a predatory chain reaction, like the 8 great villains in Hunters. One spark triggers a global catastrophe. July 1st. Hong Kong's handover begins. Western capital is flooding Asia like a silent invasion. I remember this from my past life, an S-rank dungeon conquest in Asia that sparked a global war. Today is July 1st. Only 24 hours remain before the world shifts forever. Even with future knowledge, I'm anxious. I stare at my inbox, waiting for the signal. Ding! The notification finally echoes. Jonathan has secured the perfect position for tomorrow. It feels like entering a dungeon with top-tier gear. My hard-earned points won't go to waste. Luck has nothing to do with this victory. I keep my composure, muscles tight. One slip-up could ruin everything. It's only been a year since my return. Yet, I feel like I've lived 1,000 lifetimes. I'm stuck in a classroom during a test. My eyes are glued to the clock. Thailand is 2 hours behind us. In 30 minutes, their national bank will announce the aid. The fools betting on Thailand will multiply. Their wealth will soon become ours. I'm lost in calculations until my teacher snaps me back. Wait, something is wrong. I have no memory of this woman from my past life. The lunch bell rings at 12:30. I bolt upright, claiming a sudden illness. She glances at my test paper. A perfect score. I usually hide my genius to stay hidden. She lets me go, trusting I'm no troublemaker. I thank her and rush out, but I can feel her eyes burning into my back. No time for that now. I race home and fire up the computer. This ancient internet speed is testing my patience. On the other side, Jonathan is sweating. He's waiting for me to go online. He speaks carefully, his voice trembling. Our profits have skyrocketed 300 times. $60 billion. A jolt of pure adrenaline surges through my soul. I predicted this, but seeing it is a miracle. Deep breaths, Soo-hyun. Now, the real battle begins. The exchange rates are dancing before my eyes. I grip my desk to stay focused. My heart hammers against my ribs. I type the final command. Start the withdrawal. We must exit before the trap closes. Panic hits as Jonathan reports the market shift. Our massive withdrawal is moving the world. 31, 32. We hold our breath as the numbers climb. We hit the peak just before the crash. We've officially rewritten the course of history. Jonathan boards a plane for Seoul. Global headlines scream about Thailand's collapse. An economic storm is swallowing Southeast Asia. Jonathan slams a heavy suitcase onto my table. His face is dead serious. He admits the final profit dropped during the exit. I expected as much safety over greed. How much? I ask. He holds up 5 fingers. $50 billion. My head spins. It's more than enough to change the world. I reassure my stunned partner. I planned this, but even I'm breathless. The power in our hands is terrifying. The real war starts now. I look at the numbers. My revenge has finally found its fuel. Soo-hyun's blood boiled as he declared the Asian economic crisis was just the beginning. Our next target? The Hong Kong market. Jonathan's eyes gleamed with greed as Soo-hyun shifted the conversation toward global dominance and massive wealth. With this capital, I need you to secure specific lands in South Korea. Jonathan looked at him in total shock. Investing in real estate now? Soo-hyun smirked. We will dominate every market if it brings us mountain-sized profits. Are you insane? You view 50 billion as mere pocket change? Don't worry, Jonathan. This tension doesn't suit you. Once Hong Kong falls, we'll establish 2 elite investment firms and recruit the world's most dangerous experts. I'm talking about the legendary corporate hunter, Jeffy. Jonathan froze. He couldn't believe Soo-hyun's sheer audacity. Recruiting an M&A superstar is just the start. The time is coming when the world's wealth is mine. Jonathan was no longer surprised by this boy's godlike ambition. Days later, a new office door finally swung open. Staff members gaped as Jonathan walked in. Stop staring. We have finally entered the professional league of power. Welcome to Jonathan Investment. In the abyss, there are monsters called void ants that march in massive swarms. They devour everything in their path. Hedge funds are no different. They will tear through Southeast Asia's soul. Their massive profits will eventually flow into my hands. It seems history has already begun to shift its course. Reading the news, Soo-hyun paused. He was finally moving into a new office to launch his secret corporation. The landlord praised the building, but Soo-hyun only cared about high-level security and lightning-fast Wi-Fi. No more lag. Decorating with monster sketches, he prepared his first line of defense. Jonathan began building a massive shadow empire. Thousands of shell companies and sales teams were formed. Taxes and commissions were merely numbers in this grand game. Soo-hyun planned to seize the Donald Empire, the heart of the system's data, including dungeons, skills, and stats. If I had this power in my past life, the 8 heavens would already be dead. Just wait, villains. While heading to the office, news broke. The central bank announced a venture project with a foreign firm called Golden. Golden was just a ghost company. Once Jonathan secures the loot, we will vanish by July 2nd without a trace. Jonathan entered Soo-hyun's office and froze. It looked like a hardcore gym filled with heavy weights and sandbags. He tried hitting a boxing ball, but it smacked him back. Soo-hyun sighed. An A-rank hunter can't even do this? Here is the list of 1,000 ghost companies I created. Good job, Jonathan. Soo-hyun showed him the cash. No credit cards from now on, only cash. Jonathan felt like a criminal, but Soo-hyun corrected him instantly. We are billionaires. Jonathan looked at the monster posters and smiled, thinking Soo-hyun was still just a child. By October, Soo-hyun reached the U.S. Jonathan's billion-dollar headquarters was a mess, filled only with high-powered computers. Jonathan complained about losing uncounted millions in the stock market. Soo-hyun remained calm. We are on track. Seeing the market collapse was still chilling. Let's move. Soo-hyun sat down to ignite the Hong Kong plan. For days, the Hong Kong market bled. Suddenly, Jonathan screamed. A group of hunters was closing in on them. If caught, everything turns to dust. Protect the New York branch now. Jonathan obeyed and cleared the threat instantly. The trade began. If Hong Kong's market falls by my hand, the future is no longer a predictable map. Both sighed in relief as everything stayed on track. Now, we just wait for the government's final move. Soo-hyun prepared to leave, but Jonathan suddenly let out a deafening shout. He turned and saw him staring in shock. A ghost town office humming with cold machines. Jonathan wailed in despair, his fortune vanishing into the stock market's bottomless abyss. Soo-hyun remained an island of calm. The predicted carnage was devastating, but his past life memories told him he was winning. The predator prepares to strike. He cracked his knuckles and sat at the terminal, initiating his plan to dominate Hong Kong. Chaos ignited across the exchange. For days, Hong Kong's market convulsed as Soo-hyun's invisible hand manipulated the very flow of capital. Suddenly, Jonathan screamed in terror. They're right behind us. A mysterious force was tracking their digital footprints through the grid. Exposure meant total annihilation. Soo-hyun didn't blink, ordering Jonathan to fortify their New York stronghold before their trail turned to ash. Jonathan secured the perimeter within hours. Now, the final trade loomed. Both men waited, hearts hammering against their ribs in silence. A chilling thought struck Soo-hyun. If he shattered this market, history would warp, rendering his future knowledge completely and utterly obsolete. He was playing God with the timeline. One wrong move and his ultimate advantage, his memory of the future, would vanish forever. The storm finally settled into orbit. Exhaustion took hold as they realized the plan worked. Now, only the government's move remained. Soo-hyun prepared to leave, but Jonathan's shout echoed again. Outside, the massive groundwork for Soo-hyun's new construction empire was beginning. He collapsed in despair, clutching his head. Soo-hyun had proven them all wrong. Just an hour ago, the corporate executives were gloating in their high-rise office. They were celebrating a massive profit from a $500 million currency trade. They thought they had finally outsmarted Jonathan and secured a fortune. The lead director smirked, thinking he had avoided a layoff. He believed he had turned a certain loss into a legendary win. But destiny had other plans. Suddenly, the TV news broke. Hong Kong's financial status flashed across the screen. The executive's face turned ghostly pale as he stared at the breaking reports. Hong Kong had hiked interest rates 4 times over. A heavy, suffocating silence filled the room. Then, the chaos began as every single phone started ringing at once. 500 million multiplied by 4. He began to tremble, realizing the catastrophic scale of his mistake. He had just lost an unimaginable amount of wealth. Meanwhile, in Jonathan's office, the atmosphere was electric. Soo-hyun's predictions were far more accurate. The market hadn't just dipped, it was in a total freefall. It wasn't just Hong Kong. The global stock markets were hemorrhaging. From spot trades to futures, everything was crashing down in a beautiful symphony of financial destruction. Our side was cleaning up. Soo-hyun watched as his calculated moves bore fruit. The Asian financial crisis was spreading like a wildfire that no one could stop. A domino effect triggered Black Monday. Soon, even the European markets were collapsing. The two partners watched the screens, their faces illuminated by the falling red charts. They waited like gamblers watching a lottery drawing. Once again, Soo-hyun had hit the ultimate jackpot. In this new era, people often call such success mere luck. But with the sheer power of the capital they now held, they could crush any obstacle. Old Wolf Jonathan's dream finally became a reality as the media hailed him. He was officially crowned the King of Investment. His name now sat firmly among the top billionaires on the planet. Yet, the true mastermind remained in the shadows. Soo-hyun asked cautiously if his identity was still hidden. Jonathan assured him that the world only knew of a mysterious figure named John who backed their success. "You can rest easy," Jonathan said. "I've calculated our combined assets. John currently holds $11.2 billion, while I hold $10.7 billion myself. If we include the funds from our shell companies, we are the two richest men on Earth." A week later, the crisis was the only topic anyone discussed. Even Soo-hyun's teacher talked about the economy as if explaining it to children. But Soo-hyun had a much more important meeting with a woman named Yami. She was a stunning real estate expert with a sharp mind. More importantly, she was willing to do anything to close a deal, even if it meant breaking laws. "I've been searching for someone like you for 8 months, Soo-hyun said. Yami was confused, as she had never heard of his company, Jone, before today. "This is where you will work," he declared. Within a short time, Yami had already closed a massive deal with a presidential candidate, bringing in $15 billion. The candidate promised to lead the country through the financial storm. Soo-hyun was watching the news when Yami entered his office with a triumphant smile on her face. He congratulated her on becoming the most sought-after figure in politics and business. Yami blushed, insisting that all the credit belonged to his brilliant strategic guidance. "You did the legwork. I only gave the special orders," Soo-hyun replied calmly. Yami then suggested expanding their empire into the real estate market and other sectors. "This country is a goldmine for business," she said with excitement. However, she started questioning some of his previous directives, trying to find a more logical path. Soo-hyun cut her off instantly. "That's enough, Yami. I won't be at the office often. I expect you to maintain the trust of our high-profile clients. But above all, you must follow my special instructions without question." The cold intensity in his voice made her tremble. She quickly apologized, feeling his overwhelming aura. He calmed her down and suggested hiring more executives. Winter soon arrived. Soo-hyun knew it would take time to buy the hill and locate the hidden dungeon. He remembered the first dungeon from his past life. It looked like a secret military base. Back then, the military held absolute control under the government's eye. He had been chosen as a test subject, a mere human lab rat. But standing before the trial gate, Soo-hyun realized the truth was far more terrifying. As he reminisced, a car approached. It was a construction contractor he had summoned. They needed to discuss building a massive facility on this specific mountain site. And when Soo-hyun mentioned he wanted to level the entire mountain for roads and buildings, the contractor was stunned. In this economic crisis, such a project was a godsend. The contractor accepted immediately, seeing a chance to survive the recession. "Time is our only enemy, not money," Soo-hyun emphasized. "Finish the job as fast as possible." As they walked to the car, the contractor asked why he was chosen. Soo-hyun looked at a photo of the man's daughter stuck to the dashboard and smiled. "Isn't this a tough time for fathers?" he asked. The contractor was moved to tears, thanking Soo-hyun repeatedly. Soo-hyun's own father returned home that night, completely wasted. This was his 3rd time this week. In his past life, his father often drank to forget his failures. But now, he was working for a company Soo-hyun owned. Back then, his father had given him a bank book with 1 million won. It was a loan to help him start investing. Since the Hong Kong incident ended, leveling a mountain to build a private road and skyscrapers, the foreman stood stunned by the audacity of such a project. In this era of economic ruin, a job was a miracle. The man accepted instantly, his eyes gleaming with newfound hope. "Time is my only enemy, not gold," Soo-hyun declared. "Finish this project with godlike speed." The foreman bowed in frantic agreement. Clambering into his truck, the man hesitated. "Why me?" he asked, wondering why Soo-hyun would trust a struggling, desperate father. He looked at his daughter's photo on the dashboard. Tears of gratitude spilled over as he thanked Soo-hyun with his whole soul. That night, Soo-hyun's father stumbled home drunk again 3 times in 1 week. The familiar, bitter scent of the past returned. In his previous life, this sight brought only misery. But now, his father was unknowingly an employee in Soo-hyun's own shadow company. He remembered the old bank book 1 million won. His father's humble life savings, lent to him to start his first investment. With the Hong Kong operation settled, it was time. Soo-hyun would now transform that small family loan into a global empire. Doubling his wealth felt like a dream. But Soo-hyun's greed led to a catastrophic market crash. The dot-com bubble burst, erasing his fortune instantly. Despair consumed him as he wept in agony. His father coldly demanded repayment, claiming this failure was nothing compared to his own struggles. Trusting his contractor, Soo-hyun began securing the construction site to hide the legendary dungeon entrance. He ordered high fences around the mountain, ensuring absolute control over this forbidden territory's secrets. With logistics finalized, Soo-hyun focused on training and investigating the hidden players in this world. First was his teacher. Investigation proved she didn't join this school by mere coincidence. She suffered from hallucinations. But Soo-hyun knew these were symptoms of an unawakened divine power. She was a rare, awakened, a psychic healer capable of reading the very souls of those around her. These specialists are rare and fragile, yet their mental strikes can shatter an enemy's mind instantly. Next was the doll, future leader of the 8 evils. Soo-hyun assigned 𝒂𝒂𝒓𝒏 to investigate. The mission: find him before he acts. Meanwhile, Soo-hyun geared up for his own trial. After months of construction, a perfect cover was built. Soo-hyun stood before the secret gateway. The door opened to a shimmering portal crackling with lethal lightning. The system hummed in response. Entering an F-rank dungeon without a resurrection ticket was suicide. But the OP-MC needed power. To transcend his past, he had to risk everything. He descended the stairs into the abyss. Inside, modern technology failed. His high-tech gear was useless against the dungeon's ancient magic. Relying only on his blade and basic supplies, he ventured deeper into the suffocating darkness. A sudden bolt of lightning dazed him. Simultaneously, in America, Jonathan received a chilling email. It was Soo-hyun's final will. Back in the dungeon, a predator lunged from the shadows. Soo-hyun dodged the beast's jaws, his sword drawing first blood in this life-or-death struggle. He stayed alert, delivering a fatal blow. But a second monster struck from his blind spot. Teeth sank into his shoulder. Ignoring the pain, he plunged his blade into the creature's eye. A third beast charged, exploiting his injury. His movements slowed, the predator sensing victory. It pinned him down, jaws gaping for the kill. But Soo-hyun had one final trick. He drove his steel through its heart just as the system announced 3 hellhounds slain. This was just the beginning. 60 hounds remained, and one mistake would mean certain death. These 𝒂𝒓𝒏 hellhounds were relentless hunters. The dungeon was a shifting, deadly maze. Their positions changed constantly, making the path forward impossible to predict for ordinary men. 3 missions stood between him and freedom: hunt the pack, slay the boss, and duel. Only by completing all 3 could he escape. He chose this hell for one specific prize: the boss kill reward, an escape ticket. Suddenly, a treasure chest glimmered within the rocks. It was a dungeon box, but Soo-hyun hesitated. Experience warned him of the hidden risks. The drop rates were low, and a failed opening could trigger a devastating mental curse. Without a safety net, he chose to walk away. Survival was his only priority today. He reached the first chamber. Hoping for a single foe, he was met with nightmares. Dozens of burning eyes glared through the dark. The pack was waiting, hungry for blood. As light hit the room, the hounds prepared to strike. Soo-hyun slammed the door shut. He had hoped to save his mana, but the situation demanded his full, terrifying power. He activated Odin's wrath. His blade erupted in a symphony of roaring, lethal lightning. With a thunderous kick, he shattered the door and charged into the sea of monsters. The hounds lunged with blinding speed, but Soo-hyun was a whirlwind of divine destruction. Lightning illuminated the chamber as his sword carved through flesh and bone with ease. Blood sprayed across the walls. One by one, the predators fell before the strongest warrior. The system chimed relentlessly, the kill count surging as Soo-hyun unleashed his past-life fury. Enemy numbers were overwhelming, draining Soo-hyun's stamina. He focused on defense, desperately hunting for a single opening. Suddenly, a massive alpha lunged, grabbing his blade bare-handed. It completely ignored the lethal surges of lightning tearing through its flesh. With his strength depleted, Soo-hyun couldn't match the beast's raw power. Gritting his teeth, he poured his soul into one strike. He drove his sword deep into the monster's ribs. It shrieked, summoning the entire pack for a final, blood-soaked slaughter. Claws shredded his skin as Soo-hyun's blood painted the floor. His vision blurred and went dark. The end had come. Silence returned to the chamber. Soo-hyun lay motionless amidst the carnage, his sword shattered. No breath, no life, total stillness. Suddenly, his pupils flared. Soo-hyun gasped, clutching his mangled chest. He forced his broken body to stand once more. He checked the system logs immediately. At the very brink of death, a hidden miracle had finally been triggered. The clutch skill had awakened. His stats evolved as pain vanished. Unbelievably, he'd been unconscious for 23 hours. Using such a trump card in the first room was risky, but 56 hellhounds now lay dead at his feet. His score reached 204. A bronze chest required 300. His initial rewards were truly beyond price. Heavily wounded, he needed rest to recover. 4 monsters remained. But then, a chilling sound echoed from the shadows. Growls erupted at the door. 2 shadowhounds peered in, lured by the overwhelming scent of Soo-hyun's fresh blood. They hesitated, waiting for their superior. A terrifying 2-headed hellhound stepped forward, radiating an aura of pure slaughter. This beast was a true predator, far stronger than the rest. It brandished 2 massive, bone-crushing cleavers, with murderous intent. A dual mission? Soo-hyun froze. Why was such a high-level entity appearing in this low-rank sector? The monster lunged instantly. Soo-hyun barely dodged a vertical strike that shattered the stone where he'd just stood. Unarmed and cornered, Soo-hyun calculated his odds. This beast was at least E rank. Without his skill, he was dead. The monster hurled one cleaver like a guillotine. It was a calculated throw, designed to end the fight in seconds. Soo-hyun dodged, and the blade impaled another hound instead. Enraged by its own mistake, the monster's fury exploded. It unleashed a whirlwind of strikes. Soo-hyun fled toward the item chest he'd bypassed earlier, his life on the line. He dodged a lethal blow and lunged for the chest. Just as the monster's claws gripped his ankle, the system flashed. Open the chest? Confirm! Soo-hyun roared, delivering a brutal kick to the monster's skull. You received an escape ticket. As the beast prepared to crush him, Soo-hyun crushed the ticket in his palm. Reality warped around him, space distorted, and Soo-hyun felt himself drifting through a void before crashing onto solid ground. He rolled to his feet, eyes darting for threats. He wasn't in the tomb, he was back at the dungeon gate. Soo-hyun let out a dark, triumphant laugh. That escape ticket was a godsend. He'd survived the impossible once again. No wonder others went mad for this system. But this was just a taste of the coming, soul-crushing nightmare. Humans struggle for hope until the very end. He'd escaped, but his solo overconfidence nearly cost him everything. 30 missed calls from Jonathan? He'd deal with that later. Right now, he needed to call her. Teacher Sohai, are you still home? Moments later, a white car pulled up to the dungeon site where Soo-hyun waited. Seo-hee jumped out, horrified by his state. Why are you covered in blood? What happened to you at this place? Soo-hyun's eyes glowed a sinister crimson. Choose now. Return to your normal life, or follow me into the abyss. Suddenly, a phantom hound lunged from the shadows. Sohai screamed, raising her hands to shield herself in terror. Soo-hyun pulled her close, calming her heart. Steady. That was just a fragment of my memory. You're safe now. Sohee's latent memory-reading power was awakening. She shivered in the corner, overwhelmed by the horrific images she'd seen. Soo-hyun regretted his haste. Trembling and drenched in sweat, she whispered, Are we truly chosen to fight those things? Yes. I've been preparing for the day they break free. He looked toward the dungeon entrance with grim determination. He handed her a contract. Loyalty meant legendary rewards. Refusal meant keeping his secrets until the world ended. Since middle school, she'd seen system windows but dismissed them as delusions. Tonight, the truth was finally undeniable. She could sense the souls of others. And in Soo-hyun, she felt a power more overwhelming than anything imaginable. She finally agreed to follow him. But your serious face, it's actually quite terrifying, she joked through her fear. Soo-hyun smirked, his eyes cold. Welcome to the real world, Sohee. Welcome to the side they don't show. They sped off toward the company. The city blurred as Soo-hyun drove with the intensity of a man possessed. Soo-hee remained tense, her expression grim. Soo-hyun noticed and chuckled. Relax, teacher. The real war hasn't even begun. Her mind was sharper than ever, filled with gratitude for this second life. But that 3 billion won contract? Doubts gnawed at her. Could he truly pay? He merely smirked at her hesitation. You'll see soon enough. Then, Jonathan appeared. Jonathan's jaw dropped in sheer terror. Soo-hyun, you're back? What's with the ice? How badly are you broken? He screamed in a frantic panic. Only after Soo Hyun's cold reassurance did the man finally stop hyperventilating. Exhaustion hit Jonathan like a truck he hadn't slept in days. Behind him, Seo Hai stared at the blonde stranger. Are you the investor, Jonathan? No. The legendary hunter, Jonathan? Her voice trembled as her face went pale. Soo Hyun introduced him coldly. Meet the executor of our deal. The man atop the global billionaire list. The god of finance. Hunter Jonathan. Seo Hai's head spun as she tried to decipher the complex contract. Jonathan only cared about the absurd salary. Specifically, the 3 billion won in blood money for her father. If you both vanish, this is madness. I'll explain later. Now, focus. We're striking the Russian market next. Global capital is flooding into Russia. A massive bond event is coming. We're going to make a killing. Another $1 billion on the line. Pouring gold into a crashing market seemed like pure suicide to Jonathan. 24 hours later, the brace was gone. Bone fused, wounds turned to scars. The monster was ready. Warm-up time, he commanded. Attack me. Facing him, Seo Hai gripped her blade with shaking, terrified hands. She froze. Soo Hyun grabbed her wrist and forced the blade into his own flesh without blinking. In a real dungeon, you'd be a corpse 10 times over. He scanned her stats, mostly average. Except for one, Mary's touch. A rare skill that restores combat readiness by absorbing trauma. The target heals, but she suffers. Stop hesitating or we both die. Attack me now, he roared as she stood paralyzed by fear. This is the final test. Seo Hai. Do it. She sobbed, eyes closed, and lunged forward with everything. Blood sprayed as the blade bit deep. When a wound cannot be closed, Mary's touch is the ultimate weapon. He could fight forever, but at a price she must endure triple the agony. A truly forbidden technique. She collapsed for 12 hours. Upon waking, Soo Hyun offered brief praise before heading out to find his father. At the bank, his father was leaving with a colleague. Soo Hyun approached, radiating an overwhelming, silent pressure. A high schooler? The colleague gasped. You're lucky to have such a handsome son, Chairman Cha. The man tossed him pocket change for books. A hilarious sight, the world's shadow king taking petty cash. Father and son walked out. His father beamed, bragging about his double promotion at the foreign exchange bank. Soo Hyun smirked. Yomi had played her part perfectly. Then, his father handed him a new bank book. This was it. The exact moment he would ignite the financial world. The first flap of the butterfly's wings. The board was set. An arrow hissed through the air, striking the absolute center with lethal precision. Seo Hai cheered for herself. She wasn't a frontline warrior, but as a sniper, she was becoming deadly. Tomorrow, we enter the gate. When she asked what to pack, his cold reply turned her blood to ice. Write your will. He wasn't joking. The carnage that followed proved that her imagination was far too soft. It was a slaughter. Soo Hyun moved like a storm of blades amidst a mountain of dead beasts. Survival means being the apex predator. There is no difference between us and the monsters we hunt. Blood splattered her face. In a panic, Seo Hai's potential finally awakened. The system chimed in her ear. Body healing activated. A divine light mended his wounds as he stood amidst a sea of hellhound corpses. He rose from the gore, blue aura flaring. His body was a map of fresh scars and devastation. Okay, impressive. You didn't lose your mind in this hell. He praised her coldly while she trembled in terror. Mission complete. Hellhound hunt. Reward. Escape scroll. He claimed it immediately, his eyes cold and calculating. Seo Hai agreed instantly, her trust absolute. With a healer, his combat efficiency reached godlike levels. The Soul World, a dark power usually reserved for villains. It allowed his strikes to manifest from any shadow. Prepare for the second room, he warned. The next trial is a duo match, and it will be hell. To his shock, he awakened the Soul Realm, a dark power once held only by villains. It granted strikes from any angle. Now, they prepared to storm the second chamber. Remember your training, he warned. A lethal two-headed beast awaited them in the shadows. Bones shattered and blood sprayed. Soo Hyun couldn't keep pace with the monster's blinding speed. A blade bit his shoulder. He dodged the next strike, lunging forward with desperate fury. A crushing kick sent him reeling. He crashed into the distance, dazed and broken. Trembling with terror, she stifled a scream. Don't use Mary's touch yet, he had commanded. Don't provoke it with that crossbow. I have a final trump card for our survival. A bone-chilling impact echoed. She covered her eyes, paralyzed by the beast's murderous intent. His voice resonated. If it gets close, run. Run as if your life depends on it. Tears fell as her heart hammered. She cursed her weak body and lack of stamina. Mary's touch remained sealed. She needed more strength to survive this living nightmare. Suddenly, the system flickered. The quest was complete. Now, the victors would be chosen. Soo-hyun had won. But behind him, a hellhound prepared to tear him to pieces. Blood splattered the walls, alerting the pack. The hound's eyes locked onto Soo-hyun. "Over here, mutts!" His arm crackled with lightning as his power exploded in a glow. He held the leader's severed head. The other lay dead in a pool of gore. A quest clear notification appeared. He smiled, knowing she was still alive and safe. He charged forward to finish the rest. Leaping high, he saw a truly terrifying foe. A king-like beast sat on a throne, watching its kin fall to his divine descent. "We've only just begun." The white-skinned predator stared back with chilling, luminous eyes. It smirked. Instantly, Soo-hyun blocked a lethal bite with his reinforced metal gauntlet. He countered with a bone-breaking blow. Despite his skills, the impact vibrated through him. His body screamed in pain, but he surged forward to tear the pack apart. Hidden by a secret artifact, she secretly channeled healing energy to support his crusade. She watched in awe as Soo-hyun fought like a demon, reckless and unstoppable. He danced through the monster swarm. Victory was their only ticket out of this hell. Days earlier, during her recovery, Soo-hyun had offered her a life-changing contract. He handed over a pharmaceutical empire, seized from the ruins of a conquered dungeon. A 2 billion salary? She trembled with joy, vowing to follow his every command. At headquarters, all eyes turned to Lady Yami. She entered, radiating financial grace. She reported massive NASDAQ profits. Her brilliance was the company's greatest hidden weapon. Meanwhile, Jonathan met a genius CEO, a former star of the elite PSD project. The prodigy had built a revolutionary tool that Jonathan was determined to acquire. If uncontrolled, this tech was a threat. Jonathan was the only one who could handle it. "I hear your product is worth $1 million, Jonathan said, starting the game. The CEO's eyes gleamed. That money would let him finally return to his dreams. "I have a better offer." Jonathan placed a $10 million check on the table. The CEO gasped in disbelief. He stepped out to consult his team, heart racing. 10 minutes, Jonathan warned. "I have a flight to Washington in 1 hour." The young man returned, hesitant. He was prepared to decline the staggering offer. Jonathan didn't flinch. He laid down another check, doubling the price to 20 million. The investment king had won. The CEO was hooked, despite his attempts to resist. "Do you know my secret?" Jonathan asked. "I've gambled my entire fortune twice. It wasn't luck, it was pure calculation." His liquidity fund was now an unstoppable force, controlling $500 billion across America and Vietnam. "I have finally grasped the third opportunity. Do you really believe that you can generate more profit than my offer? If so, Jonathan, your words are completely worthless to me. Cancel the Treasury Director meeting now. I have a more critical fate to settle." Hearing this, his heart skipped a beat. Realization hit like a physical blow. Jonathan stood up slowly, brandishing the checks with lethal, cold intent. "I'll do my best for your sake," he stammered. "But this isn't over. You'll have no choice but to return." Drenched in sweat from the overwhelming pressure, he grabbed the checks with trembling hands and fled in terror. Desperate to survive, he begged to retain 50% control. Jonathan's cold gaze made his heart skip a beat. Jonathan's face darkened, causing the CEO's pulse to stall, only to restart when a chilling smile finally appeared. "Fortune follows my name," he declared. "Google means 10 to the power of 100. That is my destiny." With a bright grin, Jonathan escorted the CEO out. But the moment the door closed, his mask completely crumbled. He let out a ragged sigh, the immense stress finally catching up. Suddenly, a clap echoed from the shadows. It was Soo-hyun. Jonathan snapped at him, still reeling from the high-stakes $20 million investment gamble they took. Jonathan couldn't fathom Soo-hyun's confidence. He didn't know this tiny startup would one day be worth $60 billion. A phone vibrated, breaking the tension. It was investigator class. The hunt for the cat had finally yielded results. John Class was a hardened ex-mercenary, a man who sought a master worthy of his life on the battlefield. He had searched for purpose until he met Ethan, a man with deep connections to the world's elite powers. Ethan saw an opportunity to climb the social ladder. He moved heaven and earth to earn the team's trust. Though restricted by company policy, Ethan whispered a dark proposal. A specialized service operating outside the law's reach. A mysterious smile played on Ethan's lips. The deal was sealed. He finally had a direct line to greatness. A black truck roared through the midnight streets. Inside, Ethan sat surrounded by masked men armed to the teeth. Their target, Bobby, was hidden in a high-security detention center for murder. Standard search methods were useless here. "Surround the building," the leader barked. "If the cat tries to bolt, open fire immediately." No mercy allowed. Soo-hyun donned his mask, his eyes cold. "Don't let your guard down. Even at 13, he's a natural-born killer." The mercenaries swallowed hard. A $1 billion bounty for a child? They realized just how dangerous this boy was. "The rich sure know how to spend," one muttered. High above, a scout spotted the target moving on the 3rd floor. They stormed upward, hearing the sound of running water. The target was in the bathroom, seemingly unaware of them. Weapons drawn. The team held their breath outside the door. Every second felt like an eternity in that hallway. Soo-hyun's suspicion grew. Why was he showering now? Had they walked into a trap set by a predator? The door creaked open. A blond boy peered out, his eyes radiating a cold, soul-crushing, murderous intent that paralyzed them. Suddenly, 2 guards gasped, clutching their throats as if invisible hands were crushing the life out of them. Bobby kicked the door open, unleashing his psychic power. Soo-hyun reacted instantly, unleashing a hail of lead at him. The bullets slowed to a crawl as they approached the boy. "Focus your fire!" Soo-hyun roared to his stunned team. Trapped in the corner, Bobby braced himself. A storm of bullets rained down, yet not a single one hit. It was his absolute defense, a mana shield that absorbed all damage. The mercenaries watched, frozen in pure terror. Soo-hyun didn't hesitate. He channeled every ounce of energy into his arm, preparing his most devastating ultimate technique, Sword of the Divine. With a horizontal slash, he tore through the boy's invincible barrier like wet paper. The impact sent Bobby flying into the wall. Soo-hyun didn't let up, charging forward with a blade in hand. Moving like a flash of lightning, he closed the gap. His blade aimed straight for the killing blow to the head. Bobby's shield flickered back to life, snapping the blade. He lunged back with a short, crimson weapon of his own. Soo-hyun dodged the counter and struck back with a steel fist technique that hit like a literal falling meteor. The boy hit the ground, blood spraying the air. Soo-hyun's strike had finally pierced through that arrogant mana shield. Soo-hyun mounted him instantly, raining down a brutal barrage of punches. The ground shattered under the sheer destructive force. The mercenaries watched in awe. They couldn't tell who was the human and who was the real monster anymore. A heavy thud echoed. Bobby had caught Soo-hyun's fist. Suddenly, a terrifying red aura exploded from the boy's body. He activated a hidden trump card, his physical stats skyrocketing. He stood up slowly, overpowering Soo-hyun's desperate, crushing grip. With a brutal headbutt, he sent Soo-hyun reeling. The mercenaries opened fire, but their bullets only struck the floor. Bobby had vanished into thin air. He used short-range teleportation to escape the certain death that awaited him there. "He's within 20 meters!" Soo-hyun shouted. "I'll take the street. You lot, split up and find him now. Search faster." A sharp sting flared in his side. That bastard managed to land a hit. Soo-hyun gritted his teeth, activating counter-skill. Senses heightened to the absolute limit. Yet the shadow remained frustratingly elusive in the dark. Next day, Mercenary HQ was thick with dread. Even these battle-hardened veterans were trembling in visible fear. Soo-hyun walked in, unfazed. Yesterday's display of power was beyond anything these common thugs had ever witnessed. In the center lay a comrade, frozen in a mask of agonizing terror and deathly, absolute stillness. Bobby's poison. Soo-hyun knew it well. If it could stun him, it would rot a normal man's internal organs. The victim was 𝒄𝒐𝒏. "I'll handle the insurance later. For now, focus on hunting this monster down." 𝒂𝒂𝒓𝒏 hesitated, sweat beading. "How do we catch that fox? Is it even possible for us to succeed? The longer we wait, the stronger he grows. Soon, even a full military force won't be able to stop him. We move now, no matter the cost. We start with his victims, beginning with the most recent kill. Isaac, age 28. Met online. The killer walked free, no weapon, no evidence, a perfectly crafted alibi. This cunning snake is hunting potential awakeners." Soo-hyun's eyes narrowed. It was time to flip the script. He dialed Jonathan. "Get me the chat records from the service providers. I need his digital trail immediately." List in hand, he turned to 𝒂𝒂𝒓𝒏. "Watch every name here. Our target will try to contact them soon. He'll likely bring backup." Prepare a strike team. We must be ready for a complete bloodbath. Ǩleq questioned the reward. For a job this dangerous, the price must be. He couldn't finish. Soo-hyun kicked open a container. Ǩleq's jaw dropped. Mountains of cold, hard cash filled his entire vision. Don't worry about the cost. Everything is ready. Soo-hyun was playing on a level they couldn't imagine. En route to Seoul, the headlines flashed. Jonathan was officially the world's richest man. Simply unstoppable. Not bad. But another shadow loomed. The pension funds and global politics controlled by the world's billionaires. The 𝒕𝒖𝒓𝒏, the invisible hand steering the world from the darkness. A truly mysterious, ancient entity. How dare you defy me? A drunkard's roar shattered the peace. He was berating a terrified flight attendant, screaming for more wine, threatening her job once they landed. Then, he noticed Soo-hyun watching him. What are you looking at? You think we're equals just because you're in business class, brat? He lunged for Soo-hyun's collar. But crackle! A surge of electricity sent the fool crashing down instantly. Just a bit of Odin's power. A minor calibration of his godlike strength. He'll survive. Probably. Seo-hoo was waiting at the gate, waving. She had traded 11 points for 11 copper boxes. What do you think I'll get? Her non-stop chatter was a bit much for Soo-hyun's ears to handle. Suddenly, a scream echoed through the building. A recovery item! I actually got one from the box. She was jumping like a maniac. Soo-hyun sighed. All that drama for a simple common healing potion? Next box. A blinding, golden radiance filled the room. A high-tier item was about to manifest. A golden glow. The jester's dagger appeared. Soo-hyun's eyes widened in pure, unadulterated shock at the sight. Her golden hand was terrifying. This weapon could trigger random paralysis, a total game-changer in high-level combat. Can I have it? Soo-hyun's interest piqued. A copper box giving up such a legendary treasure? Impossible. This was the jester's tool. Its paralysis effect was a secret curse from the depths of the spirit realm. One of 3 weapons capable of reaching S rank. But one failure during enhancement means total item destruction. Gripping the blade, Soo-hyun smiled. The enemy wouldn't stop until his goal was met. Neither would Soo-hyun. Meanwhile, Yami turned pale as she entered Soo-hyun's room. Swords, blades, and daggers were everywhere. Darts lined the walls. Is this guy Batman? She couldn't believe the lethal armory before her eyes. Just a collection, Soo-hyun explained. With the media focused on Jonathan, he needed Yami's financial update. How are our investments? He asked. Yami gave a confident, predatory smile in return to his query. Good news. We've secured the majority shares in the top 10 corporations. Our investors are winning big. This country is practically ours now. History was shifting. The era of Soo-hyun had finally begun. Summer heat intensified. The world was changing, but nature's wrath was still an unpredictable, deadly beast. Even as Storm Onga battered the peninsula, the stock market burned with an unstoppable, feverish heat. Tech surged in New York after Russia's $10 billion deal. The era of jelly had officially begun. Daewoo dominated the market as Korea's high-tech policies took hold. The world's financial landscape was shifting rapidly. But with the IMF deadline looming over Korean banks, I had to make my move. No more waiting. A normal high school life was now a distant dream. To protect my family, I had to deceive them first. That night, Soo-hyun called his father for a serious talk. He presented a faked email about a secret job. He was selected as an analyst for Jonathan's investment group. His father's eyes nearly popped out of his head. I've been practicing since you opened that trading account, Dad. Soo-hyun lied with the poise of a seasoned pro. It was a perfect cover for a high schooler's genius. He far surpassed anything his parents could have imagined. His father patted his shoulder, his voice filled with pride. I never realized how special my son truly was. I'm only sad I wasn't there for your biggest moments. But seeing the man you've become, it's enough. He hugged Soo-hyun tightly, tears blurring his vision. You've grown up. You don't need to worry about me. Work with the best. Chase your dreams, my son. I'm sorry I didn't support you sooner. Soo-hyun felt a lump in his throat as he comforted him. This is more than enough, Dad. Thank you. Looking at an old taekwondo photo, his mother chimed in. You were so excited to represent our country back then. Soo-hyun forced a smile, hiding his heavy inner thoughts. You worked so hard. I hope you find happiness, she said. He scratched his head, acting the part of a modest son. His mother sighed with a bittersweet, proud smile. I'm just glad you found your calling. We're so proud. Family business settled. Now, it was time for war. Seo-hee noticed Soo-hyun's bright mood the second he walked in. She could read his aura like an open book. His face darkened instantly, making her panic and explain. I'm not reading your mind. It's just written on your face. I feel much lighter now. Is our operation ready to go? She gave a confident thumbs up. Everything was set. The hunt for the awakened was progressing perfectly. Under a storm, they ventured deep into the dark forest. Soo-hyun tracked a faint trail while So-hee followed closely behind. She was amazed by his sharp, supernatural instincts. Suddenly, she froze. A blue light flickered through the grass. A dungeon gate had already been opened. She ripped off her hood, staring in absolute disbelief. What the hell? This gate was sealed just yesterday. This was exactly why Soo-hyun hadn't wasted time at school. Traces of other awakened were everywhere in this forest. How many are there? Soo-hyun's voice turned cold and sharp. So-hee drew her blade, her eyes glowing a crimson red. Just one, and he's scouting us out, just like we are. Soo-hyun watched her, impressed by her natural combat intuition. She was already wary of other hunters. Don't be tense. Soo-hyun calmed her down. The rain would hide their tracks. They waited for hours, watching the gate from the shadows. The storm showed no signs of letting up. Seo-hee shivered in the rain, fearing her body would freeze. But Soo-hyun knew. No gear meant sharper, deadlier senses. Suddenly, the light from the gate began to flicker out. The eerie blue glow vanished into total darkness. Soo-hyun lunged forward, clearing the brush to investigate the site. The atmosphere felt heavy and deathly silent. The gate resealed. The first hunter inside is dead. So-hee gasped. The intruder had been completely devoured. She pulled up her hood, exhaling a sigh of relief. Soo-hyun patted her shoulder. You did well to stay cautious. Stay sharp like that, and you might actually survive this. So-hee's heart fluttered as he touched her shoulder. As Soo-hyun checked the system, their bodies began to glow. They were entering a whole new level of hell. The system announced 3 deadly trials ahead. Phase 1, the Dead Zone. Phase 2, the Duke's Decay. And finally, hibernation. Soo-hyun frowned at the mention of the Duke. Are you afraid of centipedes? He asked suddenly. So-hee scoffed. They're just bugs. Why would I be scared? But moments later, her footsteps came to a dead halt. She stood paralyzed, trembling like a leaf in the wind. So-hee? What's wrong? We need to keep moving. He followed her terrified gaze toward the jagged rock wall. A massive, chitinous tail was writhing in the shadows. It lunged! Soo-hyun grabbed So-hee, diving away just in time. He drew his Joker's blade, striking with lethal precision. Steel flashed as he hacked at the monster's armor. So-hee could only stare at the towering, nightmare creature. It was a general-class centipede with glowing, murderous red eyes. Its massive feelers whipped through the air like lashes. Behold the Duke of the Dungeon! Watch out for the venom! The true battle for survival had finally begun. Prepare your heart, Soo-hyun warned coldly. The most hideous beast is right before us. Hardly comforting words. These monsters, their eerie movements felt almost human. Sparks flew from the collision. Soo-hyun roared. Target the antennae! Destroy their senses now! Sever their weapons. Aim for the neck joints and watch for the venomous leg stingers. With a twin-blade flash, he slew it. System 1. 30 noble centipedes eliminated. Too easy. Soo-hyun frowned. As an E rank, they should have been much more formidable. It lunged again. Multiple brains kept it alive, but losing feelers made it a mindless beast. Watch the venom. Only a seal works, but don't worry, I'll handle the defense. 1 sting paralyzes for a day. However, their iron-hard skin softens the moment they die. Soo-hyun sliced the belly open, peeling skin as putrid fluid sprayed everywhere. He reached into the slime. Blood and gore splattered as he searched the disgusting interior. Seo-gi-hui froze in horror as he pulled out a glowing, prismatic gem from the mess. Found it. A magic stone. Currently useless, but soon it will be worth more than gold. This easy kill wasn't luck. The system warned. Enemies were already closing in. Countless red eyes glared from the shadows. The swarm was ready to devour their prey. Skill. Seismic wave. Soo-hyun channeled energy downward, shattering the very foundation of the earth. The ground exploded, launching the screeching swarm into the air in a chaotic display of power. Skill. Goddess's blade. A mana wave bisected them, instantly stripping the survivors of their antennae. He charged, daggers severing joints with lethal precision. System. Kill count is rising rapidly. 12 down. He had slain a dozen centipedes while sustaining only minor, insignificant wounds. Near E rank, his past life A rank combat memories were finally flooding back into his mind. I'm stronger than these system stats suggest. A confident, predator's smile crossed his face. No more waiting. Let's end this trial now. We don't need a whole month. Suddenly, over 100 centipedes emerged. Agonizing exhaustion gripped their battered bodies. 5 days of poison and slaughter. The endless swarm made him lose all track of time. He recalled unleashing Odin's wrath and Joker's explosion, bolstered by the howling gale's speed. Activating courage, he stood amongst the corpses, his mind a blurred mess of combat instincts. Seeing Seogi-hui unconscious, he cursed his arrogance. He hadn't predicted this massive swarm. He forced water into her mouth. She coughed awake, gasping. What happened to us? We were surrounded by 100 beasts. All cleared, only the boss remains now. She gained hatred and confusion skills. Her potential for cunning was growing truly terrifying. System, skill. Calamity has evolved from S rank to double S rank. Incredible power. Yet, a primal fear took hold. We must rest. The boss requires our full strength. High-tier dungeons demand a healer with full mana. They retreated to catch their breath. Suddenly, they froze. A suffocating, godlike pressure emanated from the darkness ahead.